Dr. Ashley, and we are both psychologists.
Welcome to our first ever podcast called Do You Ever Feel? These episodes are going to be all about the psychology behind what we think and feel.
And what we're going to do, we're aiming to make these podcasts under 20 minutes. And there's a reason for that. Research suggests that the average attention span is from 15 to 20 minutes. So we're wanting to make these podcasts accessible, short, something that you can fit into your daily routine. And what we'll do, we'll talk about a topic in psychology, we'll unpick it a little bit further, and then what we'll do is we'll give you some strategies that you can apply straight away. So the very first episode is, do you ever feel you're not good enough? So we're going to explore this in more detail and talk a little bit about imposter syndrome. So I was wondering, Kelly, could you start us off by explaining what imposter syndrome is and how you might experience that?
Important to identify that imposter syndrome, it's not a diagnosable condition, it's not in the DSM-5. It is a concept in psychology that's all about a particular pattern of thinking. So it's very much about feeling unworthy of our achievements, feeling that we don't deserve some of the achievements that we have, or that we feel very nervous when taking on new challenges, like we don't deserve that. So it's very much about not feeling good enough. And a way that a lot of people describe imposter syndrome is feeling like a fraud, and feeling like a fraud that is going to be exposed in some way. And it seems like something that many people experience. Is it something that's common?
Yeah, basically it's actually very, very common. So there was a recent study by KPMG that found that 75% of female executives had experienced imposter syndrome at some point in their career. So it's very, very common. What the research shows us is basically that it tends to be more common in women, which I think that's quite interesting. And perhaps we can explore that at a later point. But yeah, it tends to be very common in women, and it also seems to be very common in people that are described to be successful. So the more successful you are, the more likely you are to have experienced imposter syndrome in your career.
Wow, it's so interesting, and it sounds like it's something that many of us do actually experience. Do you have any examples of what imposter syndrome looks like in the day-to-day lives?
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose to put it simply, like imposter syndrome tends to come up when you're stepping outside your comfort zone. So this might be when you're taking on new challenges, new roles and things like that. You're stepping outside of the area that you feel comfortable in. So an example might be, you might experience imposter syndrome if you've just started a new job. And you know, there might be thoughts going through your mind like, oh, they've hired the wrong person. Like, maybe I was just really good at the interview, but I'm not able to actually do the job. It might be a case of thinking, oh, they've hired the wrong person, they've made a mistake there. And these thoughts might be going through your head as you're maybe walking into the new building, you're getting introduced to your new colleagues, and you might actually be experiencing this when you're meeting new colleagues and you're like, wow, like everyone seems to know exactly what they're doing. They might come across very confident and you're like, that's not me, that's not, I don't know, I feel like a bit of a fraud here. So I would say that the most common example of it is when you're starting a new job, and I suppose that could be for a whole host of different reasons. You're obviously going outside your comfort zone, you're going to a new place that you've maybe never been before, you're meeting new people that you don't necessarily know and things like that. So it's one of those where you're really putting yourself out there, and it's, you know, you have those natural kind of first day nerves and things like that. So it's very, very common, especially when you start a new job. And you might also experience it, say for example, you have been in a job for quite some time, and maybe you've been asked to deliver a presentation. And lots of people, when they get asked to do a presentation, there's so many people that just really don't like public speaking. Like it really, they get experiences of anxiety and things like that. But with the imposter syndrome, what you might be thinking is things like, oh, I don't really know much about this topic. Oh, I'm not an expert. Like, who am I to stand up and present in front of people? Maybe it doesn't sit comfortably with some people. But again, it's because they're simply stepping outside their comfort zone. They're doing something that's out with their comfort zone themselves. And then also another example might be, say you sit an exam and you get a really good result. You might, instead of actually internalising that and thinking, well, I studied hard, put the effort in, and I know the topic, you might be thinking things like, oh, I must have just been really lucky that day. It was luck on the day. It might be the right question came up, or I had my lucky pen, or whatever it might be. You tend to externalise it to external events, and it's almost like you're not like attributing that, you're not linking that to the effort and the time and dedication that you put into it yourself. You're putting it out more that, oh, it was because of these external events that happened and that's why I got that result. Maybe the marker made a mistake and they give me some extra points, or like it might just be things like that. So really what it is, it's just like, it's a sense of like feeling that you don't deserve what you've got. And that could also be maybe you get a promotion or something like that. You get promoted up the ranks, and all of a sudden you're coming into this new role, you've got this new identity to adopt to as well, so that can be quite challenging, and it might be like, oh, am I ready for this? I'm not quite sure.
Absolutely. And there are like so many examples of things that we experience actually quite regularly, and thinking about ways we can manage imposter syndrome and things we can do to, I guess, alleviate some of those feelings of uncertainty and not feeling worthy or deserving of the things that we've achieved. Firstly, I think acknowledging it, simply acknowledging it as this is what I'm experiencing, and it sounds very much like imposter syndrome because, as you've pointed out, it's actually very prevalent and many people experience it, but it's not something that we're all talking about.
No, absolutely. You tend to think it's just me, just me, that I'm the one that's, oh, it's because I'm a fraud and everything, and you think everybody knows exactly what they're doing, but it'd be so interesting if we could see everyone's thoughts, like, in like different like work situations and things like that. Like, it'd be so interesting.
Exactly. And it's sort of like people are just putting on a mask of this is how I'm presenting myself to feel.
Absolutely.
But actually what's going on internally is very different. So that firstly acknowledging, oh, this is how I'm feeling, this sounds a little bit like imposter syndrome, this is quite common and normal and okay. And then also recognising that when we are in a situation that feels very challenging, or that we're stretching our skill set or learning something new, then that's when imposter syndrome will come up. Absolutely. So, recognising and acknowledging as number one. And the second thing, which is really important, is sharing our feelings. So being able to talk to somebody that we trust, being able to share some of those anxieties and worries that we have to get that validation. And quite often, as we had a conversation before going on to this talk about the times we've experienced in imposter syndrome, and you'll be quite surprised when you share it with somebody that you trust and that supports you, hearing their journey of it and the things that they've done to overcome it. So that's also very important. But as well as that, journaling is a good way if you don't feel like you want to speak to somebody face to face about it. Journaling is a way that you could get your thoughts on paper and just alleviate some of those anxieties by writing things down and getting it out. And another really common way and approach that we use in psychology is mindfulness and thinking about specific breathing techniques, which you can tell us a little bit more about. Yeah,
absolutely. So mindfulness, what it simply means is I suppose it's just like bringing your attention to the present moment and just really focusing on what's going on there. And that's why breathing techniques are actually so helpful, because what they encourage you to do is just focus on your breathing. And there's a range of different breathing techniques out there, and they all have the same kind of principles and things like that. But one of my favourite ones is the 7-11 breathing technique. So it's really simple. All you do, you just breathe in to the count of 7, and then you breathe out to the count of 11.
That's very simple. Easy to remember.
Easy to remember.
7-11.
And I think because 7-11, rhymes and things, so it sticks in the memory. So you know, when you are experiencing like imposter syndrome, or you know, you're going through kind of challenging time, like I think it's really good to have like a tool. You can just like pick out your toolbox and just a little bit, right, okay, I'm going to use this now. And just like the breathing, what it does is it just like, you can repeat it over and over until you get the desired effects that you want to get. But basically what it does is, doing breathing techniques, what they basically do is they regulate your heart rate. So they bring your heart rate to kind of normal range. Obviously if you've got lots of kind of like worrying thoughts and like, you know, I'm an imposter, I'm a fraud and things like that, like your heart rate is probably going really, really fast. So what the breathing techniques do is they regulate your heart rate, they reduce cortisol in the body, which is a stress hormone, and basically what they do is they help you feel more relaxed and more in control. So you might want to do this technique 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, as many times as you need. But one thing that I really like about breathing techniques is they're very discreet. It's not that people can tell, oh, they're doing their 7-Eleven right now. Like you, it's something you can do like at your desk. You know, you can do it wherever. In a meeting, you know, you've got to present something, or it's your turn to speak about something. And what you can do is just get yourself in that kind of relaxed state and things like that, and you'll just feel a lot more calmer, more in control and things like that. So I really like that, and it's, like I said, it's so simple and it's easy to remember, and you can do it as many times as you want to.
You can do it anywhere as well.
Well, this is it. Yeah, absolutely. You can be useful in so many cases. So yeah, that's one I tend to recommend to quite a lot of people, the 7-Eleven breathing technique. And another thing you could do when it comes to imposter syndrome, what you could do is like act like a detective. And basically what you do with this is you just like gather all the evidence to suggest that yes, you are competent, yes, you are worthy, and yes, you do belong there, and things like that. So it's up to you how you do this. Some people prefer a pen and a notebook, others prefer a phone, and I quite like the idea of the phone, because I feel like, especially now, we always have our phones near to us, and it's something that we always have easy access to. So what you could do is have a section in your notes section on your phone and just write down all the evidence about how you are competent, like experiences before that have shown that you are competent and things like that. And what it does is, I suppose it will like reprogram your mind into thinking, actually, do you know what, I have quite a lot of evidence here, and it can be helpful, because what you can do is you can go back to that. Say a day you're struggling with imposter syndrome, and you can go back to that and go through your phone and okay, and then you can always add to it as well when new things come up and you've had new like challenges and you've overcame them. Like you can just basically like write down in your notes and things like that. So I like that idea, that having it in your phone, because you can always refer to it later. So yeah, so that's a couple of techniques that I would recommend for imposter syndrome.
I think they're really great examples of things that people can just pick up and try straight away.
Yeah.
So we've got number one, acknowledging it and knowing that actually this is a very common experience, and I'm experiencing now imposter syndrome, and also sharing your feelings with somebody that you trust, and potentially journaling, just getting those thoughts on paper. And then thinking about those mindfulness techniques, the 7-Eleven breathing, I really love that one. Easy to pick up and implement in any situation. As you say, very discreet. And being a detective and really thinking about examples of when you have shown that particular skill set and you have been competent in that area, or compliments people have given you, and then making a list, a note of those in some form, so you can actually go back and review those strengths and help you to stay grounded, and also see that pathway into the future, knowing that you are more than capable of doing what's ahead.
Absolutely.
And I think something that's really important to take from the concept of imposter syndrome in general is that we feel it when we're being challenged or stretched, and we feel it when we're outside of our comfort zone. So thinking about it from that perspective, Well, when we're being challenged or stretched or outside of our comfort zone is when we're actually growing.
Yeah.
We're experiencing a period of growth.
Absolutely.
And we have to go through those things to get better.
Yeah.
And so really knowing that, when I feel like this, it means I'm stretching myself and I'm growing, can be a great perspective to take to sort of managing some of what comes up.
Yeah, and it's also like reframing it, isn't it? It's like taking a scary experience or an uncomfortable experience and you're like, actually, do you know what? This is a good sign for me. This means that I'm doing the things that are going to stretch me and grow me, and I'm going to learn new skills and things like that. So I think it's just about like reframing like how you see things.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really important to view things from that perspective when in such challenging and difficult situations. So I think that really draws us to the close of our podcast. Thank you for anybody that's out there listening. And we will be doing some more episodes going forward, thinking about how we can apply psychology to the way that we think and feel. And just a note to remember that if you are struggling with your mental health, please do reach out to a mental health professional for further support and advice. Thank you.
Thank you.